A 5-year-old girl went to visit her grandmother one day. She played with her dolls as Grandma dusted the furniture. At one point, she looked up and asked, "Grandma, how come you don't have a boyfriend?" Grandma replied, "Honey, my TV is my boyfriend. I can sit in my bedroom and watch it all day long. The TV evangelists keep me company and make me feel so good. The comedies make me laugh. I'm so happy with my TV as my boyfriend." Grandma turned on the TV and the picture was horrible. She started adjusting the knobs trying to get the picture in focus. Frustrated, she started hitting the back of the TV hoping to fix the problem. The little girl heard the doorbell ring, so she hurried to open the front door. When she opened the door, there stood Grandma's minister. The minister said, "Hello, young lady. Is your grandma home?" The little girl replied, "Yeah, she's in the bedroom banging her boyfriend." Little Johnny took his new chemistry set down to the basement where he stayed all afternoon, mixing various liquids together. Eventually, his dad went down and found him surrounded by test tubes, pounding something into the wall. "Why are you hammering a nail into the wall?" asked the dad. "It's not a nail," said Johnny. "It's a worm. I tried to bring this worm back to life with my special chemical mixture, but my formula made the worm hard as a rock." Johnny showed his dad the liquid mix that he had soaked the worm in, and his dad said, "I'll tell you what. You give me the test tube with your special chemical mixture in it, and I'll buy you a Toyota." So little Johnny handed the test tube over. The next day, when Johnny got home from school, he saw a brand new Mercedes-Benz parked in the driveway. He then asked his dad about the car. "Oh," said the father, "your Toyota is in the garage. The Mercedes is from your mother." A woman arrived at a party. While scanning the guests, she spotted an attractive man standing alone. She approached him, smiled, and said, "Hello, my name is Carmen." "That's a beautiful name," he replied. "Is it a family name?" "No," she replied. "As a matter of fact, I gave it to myself. It represents the things that I enjoy the most, cars and men. Therefore, I chose Carmen." "What's your name?" she asked. He answered BJ Tits and Golf. A man and a woman are sitting beside each other in the first-class section of the plane. The woman sneezes, takes a tissue, gently wipes her nose, and shudders quite violently in her seat. The man isn't sure why she is shuddering and goes back to reading. A few minutes pass. The woman sneezes again. She takes a tissue, gently wipes her nose, and shudders quite violently in her seat. The man is becoming more and more curious about the shuddering. A few more minutes pass. The woman sneezes yet again. She takes a tissue, gently wipes her nose, and shudders violently again. The man has finally had all he can handle. He turns to the woman and says, "3 times you've sneezed, and 3 times you've taken a tissue and wiped your nose, then shuddered violently. Are you sending me signals, or are you going crazy?" The woman replies, "I'm sorry if I disturbed you. I have a rare condition, and when I sneeze, I have an The man, now feeling a little embarrassed but even more curious, says, "I've never heard of that before. What are you taking for it?" The woman looks at him and says, "Pepper." Operator: "May I know your username, sir?" Better: "My username is Daffy Pluto. Mickey Minnie Donald, Roadrunner Speedy Gonzalez, London. Operator: Wow, why do you have a username like that? Better: Why? You guys told me it had to be 6 characters long and include a capital. Husband gets home in a very good mood. He calls his wife and says, "Woman, pack your bags. You're going on a trip. I won the lottery." "Oh, honey, that's fantastic. But what kind of clothes should I pack for this trip? For warm weather? Cold weather? It doesn't matter, as long as you leave by tomorrow morning." A few months after his parents were divorced, little Johnny passed by his mom's bedroom and saw her rubbing her body and moaning, "I need a man. I need a man." Over the next couple of months, he saw her doing this several times. One day, he came home from school and heard her moaning. When he peeked into her bedroom, he saw a man on top of her. Little Johnny ran into his room, took off his clothes, threw himself on his bed, started stroking himself and moaning, "Oh, I need a bike! I need a bike!" On a transatlantic flight, a plane passes through a severe storm. The turbulence is awful, and things go from bad to worse when one wing is struck by lightning. One woman in particular loses it. Screaming, she stands up in front of the plane. "I'm too young to die," she wails. "Well, if I'm going to die, I want my last minutes on Earth to be memorable. I've had plenty of sex in my life, but no one has ever made me really feel like a woman. Well, I've had it. Is there anyone on this plane who can make me feel like a woman?" For a moment, there is silence. Everyone has forgotten their own peril, and they all stare, riveted at the desperate woman in the front of the plane. Then a man stands up in the rear of the plane. "I can make you feel like a woman," he says. He's gorgeous, tall, built, with long, flowing black hair and jet black eyes. He starts to walk slowly up the aisle, unbuttoning his shirt, one button at a time. No one moves. The woman is breathing heavily in anticipation as the stranger approaches. He removes his shirt. Muscles ripple across his chest as he reaches her, and he extends the arm holding his shirt to the trembling woman and whispers, "Iron this." A man goes to his doctor and complains that his wife hasn't wanted to have sex with him for the past 6 months. The doctor tells the man to bring his wife in so he can talk to her and hopefully determine what the problem is. The following day, the wife goes to the doctor's office. The doctor asks her what's wrong and why she doesn't want to have sex with her husband. Oh, that's easily explained. For the past 6 months, the wife says, "I've been taking a cab to work every morning. I don't have any money." The cab driver asks me, "Are you going to pay today or what?" So, I take an "or what." Then, when I get to work, she continues, "I'm late, so the boss asks me, 'Are we going to write this down in the book or what?' So, I take an "or what." I take a cab to go home after work, and as usual, I have no money. The cab driver asks me again, "So, are you going to pay this time, or what?" Again, I take an "or what." So you see, Doc, by the time I get home, I'm all tired out, and don't want it anymore. "Yes, I see," replies the doctor. "So, are we going to tell your husband, or what?" Three people, 2 men, and 1 woman, and their dogs are in the vet's waiting room. The first man's dog asks the second man's dog what he's there for. "They are putting me down." "Oh no," says the first dog. "Why?" The second dog says, Well, you see, I've been chasing the postman for years. Yesterday, I finally caught him and bit him. So, I'm going to be put to sleep. The second dog says, well, my master just completely remodeled the inside of his house. I didn't like it because my scent wasn't anywhere anymore. So, when he went to bed last night, I pissed on everything I could find to get my scent back. This morning, my master found out what I had done, so he is putting me to sleep also. The third dog said, this is my master's new girlfriend. She runs around the house all the time without her clothes. This makes me very horny. So, this morning, as she was getting out of the shower, she bent over to wipe up the water on the floor. I couldn't stand it anymore, so I jumped on her and gave it to her good. The other dogs say, so that's why they're putting you to sleep? No, says the dog. She is bringing me here to get my toenails clipped. One bright morning, the teacher stood before the class, determined to stump her students with a clever question. Scanning the room, her gaze settled on little Johnny, the class troublemaker known for his witty retorts. With a sly smile, she called out, Johnny, let's see how quick you are today. Tell me, is football male or female? Johnny, without even blinking, shot back, female, miss. The teacher, taken aback by his immediate response, asked, really? And why do you say that, Johnny? Leaning back in his chair with a cheeky grin, Johnny declared, because it's always surrounded by boys, chasing after it, fighting over it, and never understanding how to keep it happy for long. Little Johnny, on a day when he was being particularly reckless. I was playing in the backyard one morning. Soon, some honeybees started swirling around, annoying little Johnny. He began stomping on them in his temper. His father caught him trampling the honeybees, and after a brief moment of thought, said, that's it. No honey for you for 1 month. Later that afternoon, Johnny pondered upon some butterflies, and soon started catching them and crushing them under his feet. His father again caught him, and after a brief moment of thought, said, no butter for you for 1 month. Early that evening, Johnny's mother was cooking dinner and got jumpy when cockroaches started scurrying around the kitchen floor. She began stomping on them one by one until all the cockroaches were dead. Johnny's mother looked up to find Johnny and his father standing there watching her. To which Johnny said, are you going to tell her, Daddy, or do you want me to? A woman goes to her boyfriend's parents' house for dinner. This is to be her first time meeting the family, and she is very nervous. They all sit down and begin eating a fine meal. The woman starts to feel a little discomfort, thanks to her nervousness and the broccoli casserole. The gas pains are almost making her eyes water. Left with no other choice, she decides to relieve herself a bit and lets out a dainty fart. It wasn't loud, but everyone at the table heard the poof. Before she even has a chance to be embarrassed, her boyfriend's father looks over at the dog that has been snoozing at the woman's feet and says in a rather stern voice, Skippy. The woman thinks, this is great, and a big smile spreads across her face. A couple of minutes later, she feels the pain again. This time, she doesn't even hesitate. She lets out a much louder and longer fart. The father again looks at the dog and yells, "Damn it, Skippy!" Once again, the woman smiles and thinks, yes. A few minutes later, she has to let another one rip. This time, she doesn't even think about it. she lets rip a fart that rivals a train whistle blowing. Once again, the father looks at the dog with disgust and yells, "Skippy, get away from her before she shits on you." A guy was seated next to a 10-year-old girl on an airplane. Being bored, he turned to the girl and said, "Let's talk. I've heard that flights go quicker if you strike up a conversation with your fellow passenger." The girl, who was reading a book, closed it slowly and said to the guy, "What would you like to talk about?" "Oh, I don't know," said the guy. "How about nuclear power?" "Okay," she said. "That could be an interesting topic, but let me ask you a question first. A horse, a cow, and a deer all eat the same stuff, grass. Yet a deer excretes little pellets, while a cow turns out a flat patty, and a horse produces clumps of dried grass. Why do you suppose that is?" The guy thought about it and said, I have no idea." To which the girl replied, "Do you really feel qualified to discuss nuclear power when you don't know shit?" A good old girl from Louisiana takes her seat on her flight back from New York after visiting friends. Being the sweet southern gal she is, she turns to the woman beside her and says, "Hey, I'm Stacy from Louisiana. Where you from?" The woman looks to her and says, "I'm from a place where we don't end our sentences in prepositional phrases." Still with a smile, she replied to the woman, "Oh, I'm sorry. Where you from?" Little Johnny asks his mother how old she is. Her reply is, "Gentlemen don't ask ladies that question." Johnny then asks his mother how much she weighs. Again, the mother's reply is, "Gentlemen don't ask ladies that question." The boy then asks, "Why did Daddy leave you?" To this, the mother says, "You shouldn't ask that," and then sends him to his room. On the way to his room, the boy trips over his mother's purse. When he picks it up, her driver's license falls out. The boy looks it over and goes back to his mother, saying, "I know all about you now. You are 36 years old, weigh 127 pounds, and Daddy left you because you got an F in s-." A teacher cautiously approaches the subject of education with her 4th grade class because she realizes little Johnny's propensity for innuendo. But Johnny remains attentive throughout the entire lecture. Finally, towards the end of the lesson, the teacher asks for examples from the class. One little boy raises his hand. "I saw a bird in her nest with some eggs." "Very good, William," cooed the teacher. "My mommy had a baby," said little Esther. "Oh, that's nice," replied the teacher. Finally, little Johnny raises his hand. With much fear and trepidation, the teacher calls on him. "I was watching TV yesterday, and I saw the Lone Ranger. He was surrounded by hundreds and hundreds of Indians, and they all attacked at one time, and he killed every one of them with his 2 guns. The teacher was relieved, but puzzled. "And what does that have to do with education, Johnny?" "It'll teach those Indians not to the Lone Ranger." So, a couple years back, I was at a pretty fancy outdoors party. It seemed like the whole town was there, but the atmosphere was nice, and the local band played some good music, so I enjoyed myself. I thought I'd like a nice cold beer in the warm weather, so I went over to the bar. As I approached the counter, the bartender scowled at me. "Hey, buddy," he said, If you want to order something, you need to wait your turn." He pointed to a very large line to the bar. It looked like it stretched out all across the garden. So here were my options. I could wait in line or come back when it had died down. I chose the latter and thought I'd check out the barbecue. They had burgers, pulled pork, the works. However, once I got close to the barbecue, I noticed a massive line of people, perhaps twice as large as the one to the bar. So at this point, I thought to myself, I'll just go and get a cup of punch. A wife suspected her husband was having an affair with the housemaid and decided to catch him in the act. On Friday, she told the maid to take the day off. That night, she crept into the maid's room, turned off all the lights, and slipped into the bed in total darkness. As expected, around midnight, she heard footsteps approaching. A figure entered the room and climbed into the bed beside her. After a few passionate kisses, the wife's anger reached its peak. She suddenly turned on the lights and screamed, "Surprised!" The startled chauffeur stammered, "Very much so, ma'am." At the time, I worked in an open office where everybody could hear the phone conversations that went on. One woman used to spend an hour or more a day on the phone with her gal pals, talking about the state of her amours. It was like following a soap opera. A guy would come along, things would go well, then they wouldn't. He had legal problems. He'd been injured. His business was doing well or badly. Sooner or later, he was gone. One day, she clickety-clacked up to her desk, took one look and said, "Who's been in my drawer?" I replied, "Who hasn't?" A drunk man came home, late, and sat on the doorstep for 30 minutes, trying to figure out what to tell his strict wife as the reason for his lateness. He gained courage, opened the door, and found his wife and son watching a movie. He passed them and went upstairs, his heart pounding hard. To his surprise, his wife did not say a word. Just to confirm, he decided to walk past them and again back upstairs, but his wife didn't say a word. He called his son and asked him, "How come today your mother is not speaking?" The boy replied, "She asked me for lipstick and I mistakenly gave her super glue." An old farmer writes to his son who is in prison, "Dear son, this year I won't be able to plant potatoes because I can't dig the field by myself. I know if you are here, you would have helped me." The son writes back, "Dad, don't even think of digging the field because that's where I buried all the money I stole." The police read the letter, and the next day, the whole field was dug up looking for the money, but nothing was found. The following day, the son wrote again, "Now plant your potatoes, Dad. It's the best I can do from here." Did you hear about the preschool teacher who was helping one of the children put on his boots? He asked for help, and she could see why. Even with her pulling and him pushing, the little boots still didn't want to go on. By the time they got the second boot on, she had worked up a sweat. She almost cried when the little boy said, "Miss, they're on the wrong feet." She looked, and sure enough, they were. It wasn't any easier pulling the boots off than it was putting them on. She managed to keep her cool as together they worked to get the boots back on, this time on the right feet. He then announced, "These aren't my boots." She bit her tongue rather than get right in his face and scream, Why didn't you say so? Like she wanted to. Once again, she struggled to help him pull the ill-fitting boots off his little feet. No sooner had they gotten the boots off when he said, "They're my brother's boots. My mom made me wear them." Now she didn't know if she should laugh or cry, but she mustered up what grace and courage she had left to wrestle the boots on his feet again. Helping him into his coat, she asked, "Now, where are your gloves?" He said, "I stuffed them into the toes of my boots."